Hey, y'all. Welcome to Wisdom Through the Seasons, where we break the stigma of sharing our stories. All right, y'all. So today we have Miss Cassandra with us. Do you have a nickname?
So my last name is Cherry, so everybody just call me Cherry.
Cherry. I like that. So we have Miss Cherry with us then. And I am so excited for y'all to hear. I'm excited for myself, but I'm excited for what she's about to share with us today. The wisdom that she's about to give is going to be off the chain. I already know. So for those who don't know you, can you just share just a little bit about you and what you do?
All right, so again, I am Cassandra. I also go by Cherry. Thank you so much for having me on today. So who am I? Just very briefly, I am somebody's mama. I have a 5-year-old son. So that is the epitome of who I am on a day-to-day basis. His mom. I am also God's favorite. No
Oh,
shade to anybody else out there. I'm just saying, me and him just got a special relationship. I get in trouble all the time, but
come
I'm
on.
his favorite. And outside of that, professionally, I'm a leader in a Fortune 50 company, and I also have my own businesses as a resume writer and conflict and career development coach. And I have a nonprofit. I'm the founder and executive director of the Ark of Noah, which is a domestic violence nonprofit here in Dallas.
Nice, nice. Okay, so all right, y'all. So I also want to give like this little disclaimer. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about something that is a heavy topic. So if this is something that if domestic violence or domestic violence topics is something that is triggering to you, then I want you to make sure that you take care of yourself. If this is something that you have to wait to hear, that is okay. But I want to make sure that I give that disclaimer that we'll be talking about domestic violence topics today. So just make sure that, if this is a sensitive topic for you, that, you're still in the healing process, then I encourage you to watch it, because this episode is going to be very healing. But if you are in a place where you still need a little bit more time, then just come back and see us later on. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So my first question to you is what was your experience with domestic violence? What would you like to share about this part of your story?
So for me, I experienced domestic violence. It was not a part of my childhood. I was a full grown adult, and found myself in a relationship where he was amazingly charming, attractive, um, and it didn't take long before I began to be manipulated, isolated, all sorts of things from that standpoint. Oftentimes, what's the saying? Like, what glitters ain't always gold, or the
Yeah.
grass ain't as green on the other side, whatever. So
Yes.
it was glitzy, y'all, like super glitzy. I thought like he's the one kind of thing because of the way he charmed me and treated me initially. And in reality, I was blindsided by the glitz, right? And so when the abuse, the physical abuse began to happen, which was only about 4 or 5 months into the relationship. So it wasn't like we had even been together, a super long time. It started very early into the relationship. And I felt like I had to have him. It was almost like, so they talk about some of the terminology in domestic violence is that love bombing, right? Like where someone does something to you and they make it almost as if it's your fault. And then they come back and they exaggerate you with love. And so then you start to think and feel that, oh, they really do love me. And this is their way of showing me, or they show you with big gifts, right? Or big
Yeah.
outings, whatever that looks like. And if a person does that enough, the brain starts to think outside of what you may know in your heart of heart, the brain starts to think that like that's okay, right? And so then you become conflicted and you're going to do what you're comfortable with, what you are naturally comfortable with. And if you're naturally comfortable with continuing to be with that person, you're going to start to think that it's okay. And the longer it goes on, the more it happens. So in that relationship, I didn't have a child at the time. And because I stayed and I kept going back and I kept going back and I kept going back, eventually we ended up having a child. And that was at the point where I recognized, it wasn't until I had my son that I recognized that even if I wasn't going to leave for myself, like I knew I had to do better for my child. So like, when you talk about, I don't know that I've ever experienced love the way I have for my son, right? And so there was just something inside of me. The light bulb finally went off for me. And there was something inside of me that knew for him and for his sake, I had to get out of it. Even though my heart and my mind was saying, you've been in it this long, why would you leave now? Yeah. Like, that's what my heart and mind was saying. But then I'm like, he can't grow up this way. Like it should not be this way. Like he didn't ask to be here. He didn't choose his parents. And so that was the point that I was able to leave. So I guess I'll just pause there.
Okay. That was really good though. Okay, so how did your healing process prepare you for co-parenting? I think that this is a question that for anyone who has been through domestic violence and they have children, is a question that is, it seems like it's kind of like a tug of war. So how did your healing process prepare you to co-parent?
So this is probably going to be a longer answer than is needed.
That's all right, girl. Come on, give it to us.
Transparent. I don't know that there's preparation for co-parenting with an abuser. So in my situation, when I did leave, things escalated, right? So if you are familiar with the research and the statistics in domestic violence situations, when the woman or the person being abused leaves, that's typically the most dangerous time for them, right? And that's oftentimes why it takes women 7 times before they officially leave for good. They keep going back, right? And that was the same in my case. I didn't prepare for it. Now, what I did do was I did get healing, right? So, and I got my healing through, I went to therapy, and you have to have, in my opinion, a trauma-informed, actively practicing trauma therapist, right? Because trauma therapists have different techniques that they specialize in and are able to use with you as it relates to particular trauma and how it impacts the brain. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did first and foremost, was I got therapy. So I've been out of that relationship for almost 7 years at this point, because I was trying to get out of it as soon as I got pregnant, but I didn't officially leave until after I had my son. Okay. But in getting the therapy, I had to get protective orders too. And so in going through that process of getting the protective order, I somehow found myself wrapped up in the child custody piece, even though I was only going to court for a protective order. Had I known that it could potentially be anything other than a protective order, I'm being honest, I would not have went. So now for me, I'm in a space where I've never been in this situation before. I'm a brand new mother. Yeah. I'm in a courtroom thinking that I'm going to get protection here through this protective order. And when I walk out of there, I am told to give my son to the abuser on X, Y, and Z days, right? So when I say that was probably my darkest moment, because I have this new life that I am under the belief that I need to provide and take care of. Mm-hmm. And I've made the decision to leave this relationship because I want to provide and take care of this child. And then I go into this courtroom thinking that I'm doing the right thing, and I get hit with something else, right? So I say all of that with the caveat, children need both parents. That's true. I'm not excusing that, but I also believe that it needs to be done in a safe way. And in my situation, my son was an infant. And despite me getting the protective order, my son was named in the protective order. So it was not just for me. So it was proven that violence existed and had occurred and had been occurring. And then I was told to do unsupervised visits back with my abuser and give my infant son over to him. So that was a very, very, very challenging time that I don't know that anybody could have really prepared me for. I had no idea that that was like even an option at that time. So fast forward, my son's 5 now, and it's been rocky. The co-parenting situation has been extremely, extremely volatile, rocky, still abusive, right? He can't physically, I won't say he can't, he hasn't physically touched me in the last 5 years, but there are things that have transpired, whether it's trying to hit me with a car, whether it's the text messages, the cursing out, the verbal abuse, the manipulation, the allegations, it still goes on, right? Like it doesn't stop, unfortunately, with most abusers. And so it hasn't been a pretty road by any means. And it's stuff that I still have to work through myself, right? So when you talk about some of the things that I've done outside of just counseling, I am conflict coaching certified because I want to know how to deal with conflict. And because I have my nonprofit, I want to be able to help others in dealing with conflict in situations similar to mine, where you're having to co-parent, because the courts are just they don't have time to try to navigate through everybody's situation. They're just gonna tell you, dad needs to see the child just as much as you need to see the child. Y'all got figured out, go and be great kind of thing. But that's not the reality. Like, you can't expect a person who has been abused for years to just feel safe with their child or with themselves, like putting them right. That's just not safe, in my opinion. So from a legal standpoint, we got some work to do in family courts in general.
Yes.
So educating myself on conflict, educating myself on the law as it relates to custody, as it relates to some of the things that abusers continue to do. Some of it just quite honestly, it won't hold up in court because they're not willing to take the time, nor do they really have the time to like dive into all the mess that comes along with some of these custody cases, especially when abuse is involved.
When I say, you are spot on. You are spot, target, dot on. And it is, and it's beyond sad and it's beyond unfortunate, because similarly, when my mother, I was a teenager at the time, and my sister was about 4, maybe 3 or 4, and we had a situation where it escalated to the point where we saw it. My mother tried to hide us from it, so we didn't know, but I could feel that something wasn't right, but we never saw anything. And so our situation was, it got to the point where not only did we see it, but all the neighbors saw it. And so thinking that the courts would actually help and would actually step in, they did partially. Sure, we had to get she had to file a protective order, and for both of us, that helped. But when you have somebody who is literally thinking of ways to try to get to you, they don't care about no piece of paper. They do not care about no piece of paper that the courts have said, that they just not. So I remember feeling conflicted. I remember feeling like, okay, well, there is a level of safety that I feel, but I'm so scared that if I go to school and I leave my mother behind, he knows where she works. He knows, what she does. At the time, my mother was a crimes victims advocate. So it was like she knew. And it got to the point where we had to move, and we didn't know, but he followed us and he found where we lived. And so, like, and the course we're still saying, like, you still need to make sure that your daughter spends time with. I'm like, what? Somebody needs to go back to school, and they really should enforce maybe like a class or something where you literally, you cannot pass, you cannot press go until you hear and really understand women's stories when it comes to domestic violence, and men. Let me not exclude men, because I know men go through it too. But it is so unsettling that it is at a huge rate, that if we call for help because of something that is going on that has nothing to do with us, but it has nothing to do with us, but the other person, and we can't get safety, or our kids can't get safety, that is extremely disturbing to me, that we can't get the safety measures that we need to get, that there are other things that actually could be put in place that are not being put in place. And at the time, we were in Tennessee, so it's just so unsettling that we are still 2022, and there are still things that are not put in place to ensure the family's safety, that really needs to be put in place. So, and thinking about that, you actually answered my next question. So I want to caveat to this. When it comes to the child, I remember we had multiple moments, but I specifically remember my sister was 4, and we'd moved, and like I said, he found where we lived. And so my sister was like, oh, I see my dad outside. And she was conflicted because it was her father, but she witnessed that daddy did some hurtful things to mommy. And she was like, oh, daddy's outside. So she went to my mom, and my mom was, immediately filled with anxiety. She was afraid. And she said, my sister went to her and said, well, mommy, do you want us to play dead?
Oh my God.
At 4 years old, she had some type of context to understand that at 4. My sister's 21 now, praise God. But at 4 years old, for her to understand that I am in danger, and in trying to escape the danger, I need to play possum. So my question is, in that, since your son was an infant, how do you prepare your child to interact with the person who was the abuser? Because that, I think that is so difficult. My mother toyed with that, where she was like, I don't want my daughter to think that I'm trying to keep her from her father, because like you said, like, you do need 2 parents. But when one parent is not stable enough to provide what the child needs, how do you explain that to a child in a way that they don't think, oh, my mama's just trying to keep me from, from my dad, or from whoever the loved one is that they think is somebody that they know and they love, because they're not doing it to them, but they're doing it to the parent. So what would you say to that?
So to that one, that's a tough one. Just man, that's such a tough one, because my kid's 5. I really won't know what he remembers probably until he's a little older, right? And he can start saying some different things. Here's what I do know. So when I do drop-offs now, which are limited, when I do them, I don't communicate with his dad at all. And I'm so grateful that my son is at walking age now because I don't have to physically hand him over, right? Like I'm literally getting him out the car and I'm like, go ahead, go to the door. Like,
I'm gonna watch you
run
going
up there.
in.
Yeah, like, and so then I see them connect and I'm gone, right? Like that's my whole intent. Like, let me just make sure that they actually connect, like he gets some, and then I'm gone. And I know that at some point my son is gonna go, you don't talk to daddy. You don't like when I say I don't communicate with him because I still am in a place that I don't know how. I know his patterns. And so, or I'll say I used to know his patterns. I'm not in his space every day to fully know him anymore. So when something does transpire, or he is on a rampage of text or talking crazy, or the abusive language or whatever it is, I know that something's coming after that, right? And so that's usually, even to this day, there's still fear there, right? So it's hard to try to, I don't want to raise a child that's full of fear because he sees my fear. And not that he's fearful of his dad, but because I'm so protective of everything and our surroundings and where we go and what he says and all of this.
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to raise a child that way, but in reality, subconsciously, I am, right? Because there's still fear, there's still anxiety. Every time I drop my son off, I don't feel good about it, right? And I don't feel good about it because I want to keep him from his dad. No, I don't feel good about it because we don't have a working relationship. I don't feel good about it because 2 nights before I got cussed out in 60 messages and told all of these things are mildly threatened, because abusers they're strategic. So he's not going to send me a text message and say, I will kill you.
Right.
No, he may just say, we're about to go to heaven and our families are going to grieve. Right? That's something that's been said to me. And so because he's strategic in his words, when he does those things, that puts me at an uneasy space of, do I go and make this visit? Yeah. Knowing that he's in a space that he is it safe for me? Is it safe for my kid? And I can't answer those questions because I'm not around him every day anymore. So I thought I knew the pattern, and I kind of still see it in the way he moves a little bit with the messages and stuff, but I don't know, right? So I'm just risking it. I'm just like, all right, we're gonna try this time. And if sometimes I'm too rammed up, I'm like, we just not gonna go this time. And we'll do it next week, right? Like, and then that's an issue because we're under a court order, right? So that's even more. So I say all of that to say, I don't know that there's a right or wrong. I don't know that there is a plan, just like with parenting. There's no handbook on it, right? I don't know that when it comes to abuse, the only people that know the abuser are the ones that's been abused and the abuser themselves, right? So oftentimes as outsiders, we tell somebody to leave, and why do you accept that, and why do you do that? But the reality is, the person that's being abused, they have a better acknowledgement and a better gauge on if it's the right time. They have a better gauge on the intensity level of somebody's anger that they're showing. They have a better gauge at patterns. So that particular question, it might vary by person, right? Like it really may vary by person. And I wish I had more. I wish I had something that I could tell somebody specifically to do as they are raising these children in the best atmosphere, I guess, that they can, but it could be unique to the situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is very true. And actually that honestly that was very helpful what you just shared, because a lot of times domestic situations, it does vary. And I remember we had, to a certain degree, we had family that knew about what was going on and what was happening, but they didn't know to the fullest extent. And for my mother, she was like, when I felt safe enough to say something, They didn't believe me. Even though you see all the scars, you see the black eyes, you see the bruises, they did not believe me. So when you have something like that, you know, the man or the woman or they tend to shut down and they stop saying I need help. And if then you visibly see like, oh no, okay, something is wrong, you need to get out of that. Well, I tried. And so they're looking at that person or that group of people like, you're not safe for me. Because when I tried to reach out to you, you didn't give me safety. You didn't give me verbal safety. You didn't give me any clues to let me know that I could be safe with you. So if you do have someone, I would say for anybody who is going through this or is experiencing something similar, and if you have people in your life that you know that you can be safe with, that you know might be mutual family, between the dad or between the mom, whoever is the abuser, if you can, because I do know that I've come across people in my life that have went through that, but their situation, they were able to have like a middleman. They had, so instead of them dropping off the child, they had somebody like an uncle or a cousin that they could trust, that they could send off, you know, with them instead of them doing it. So if you can, if you have someone who can be that middle person, to be able to understand what that looks like, be very organize and make sure that you write everything down. If I didn't learn anything else through that experience, write everything down. Who dropped the child off at what time, what color their car was, what was the license plate. Make sure you get a couple pictures. This is what my child had on this day. And you're not doing it to be fearful, but you're doing it to cross all T's and dot all I's to continue to ensure your child or children's safety. So if you have people that will be your village, that you can actually do that with, that don't mind, that understand, you know, the severity of the situation, then put people in place that would actually do that. If not, then I always encourage, if you are not believers, this was a good time to learn how to pray because the Holy Spirit will give you, just like you were saying, will let you know when you should step out and when you shouldn't. There were times that my mother had to send my sister with her dad, and she hated it. She felt like she was the worst parent. I allowed myself to get into this situation. Now I have a child with this man, and I can't, just strike off and leave with her. So now I have to try to, it felt like trying to appease him, and he's feeling like, he has the upper hand, like he's won in the situation. You go through so many different emotions and so many different feelings. When I say I understand, I understand.
I
But
have to, oh, go ahead, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say I have to touch on that one because that's one that, and I still battle with it today, right? So no matter how much therapy I've gone through, no matter how much, there are spaces and pieces of me that are healed, right? But there are still things transpiring, right? So that puts me, it doesn't put me back at zero, but there are still things that I have to work through. And that's the hardest one, where you are in a space where you felt like at some point you gave away your power, you gave away who you knew yourself to be, and you allowed these things. So you go through that blame phase, even though it's not your fault, right? Like your choices are your fault, absolutely. But even though it's not your fault, you didn't put your hands on yourself, right? Somebody else violated you. Even though you know it's not your fault, you still blame yourself. And in that blaming yourself, as the question alluded to, you're thinking about, how is my child going to see me? Because I know that manipulation occurred in our relationship. You can't tell me he ain't going to try to manipulate my child, right? And how is that going to impact, right? The worst thing that I could ever see happening is my child being upset with me for the choices that I thought I was making to protect us.
Oh, that's it.
Right? Like, and so that's the hardest thing to really come to grips with. And when you think about in a traditional, amicable, healthy co-parenting relationship, that requires compromise, it requires communication, it requires parenting together, right? Like it just does. And when you're in an unhealthy situation or a situation where there's trauma or violence in the past or that still exists, you question if you do something, if you alter a little bit because you're trying to be, you got some healing and you trying to do what's right for your child and all of these, and then that person takes advantage of it and it puts you in a sticky spot. You know what I mean? Like, and now you either are stuck and you may be, so let's say it's related to a court order. Now you're stuck because you made a little modification and you're like, well, I was just trying to parent, you know what I mean? I don't want to argue with the person. I was thinking that I was doing the right thing. Or I can't ever compromise. I can't ever extend an olive branch because I don't want it used against me. That's the hardest thing, hands down, because my heart doesn't tell me that I don't want my son to have a father, but my heart does say I want to protect him. I don't want anything to happen to my son. And I know that these are the behaviors over here, right? Like, so that's a hard thing to overcome.
Oh my gosh, you are so on it. And I feel like if you are going through this exact thing that she's talking about, if you don't hear anything else, you are doing the best job that you can. Do not, and I know that this sounds so cliche, but you have to tell yourself this. Do not feel or accept guilt or shame for another person's actions. You did not put your hands on yourself. You did not manipulate yourself. But what you have power over and what you can control is how you respond. You can respond to how you heal. You can respond to the environment that you put yourself in. You can have power over that. You can respond with, listen, we in Texas. I don't know where everybody else is at, but you can respond with keeping you a piece of peace on you. Okay, you had a piece in the peace. You can respond that way. That's safe. All right, that's ensuring your safety, and that's ensuring your child or your children's safety, and making sure that you take the time, even if it's like 5 minutes. If you don't have anybody that you can send your child or children to, if it's 5 minutes in the bathroom, and just getting still, getting quiet, reaffirming to yourself that you are making wise decisions, you are making wise choices in parenting and raising your child. I guarantee you that sooner or later your child is going to see that, and they're going to respect you more. I went through so many ups and downs with my mother, so many phases. I'm in my 30s. I went through so many phases where I felt like I hated her because, well, mama, I saw things. There were things, again, he wasn't physical when he was around, to a certain extent. He wasn't physical when he was around the kids, or when he was around me, because at the time it was just me before my sister was born. But there were things that I was seeing. I was like, I don't like him. I don't like that. No, you're not gonna shut me up. I'm gonna say A, B, and C. And so we would always come to heads with that. And I could not understand, well, mama, why are you allowing him to talk to you like that? Why are you not standing up for yourself? And for the longest time, I was so upset with my mother, and I felt like I hated her because you put us in jeopardy. We've had these conversations. So God is healed us of this. But you put us in, this situation and that situation. And when I saw things, I said something and you ignored it. And my mother felt so guilty. She felt so ashamed that as I got older, she started to unpack more for me that I could understand. And we were really able to heal. So I would encourage that, depending on what age your child is, if they have questions, don't shy away from it, because that's just gonna make them either upset more. They're gonna have more questions. There is a way that you can have conversations with your child, especially if they're little ones, in a way that they can understand. They're not stupid, they're not slow, so they can grasp certain things. But as they get older, when I got to, I think it was like my 20s, when I got to like my mid 20s, and I probably when I gave birth to my son, and these conversations started coming back, because now I have a child, and so now there are things that I need to unpack so I can know how to break it. There was so much more. I had so much more respect for my mother that I could not see or understand while things were happening and going on. But the more that you keep going as a parent, and the more that you allow yourself to heal, and you are consistent in that, even if you fall, get back up and you keep going on that healing journey, your children will respect you. They will have so much respect for you. They will understand. So it will take time. It's going to take time. All journeys and processes take time, but they will respect you, and eventually they'll be able to see it. Like my sister was able to see, as she got older, she was so conflicted. She loved her dad. She wanted the love of her father, and he wasn't abusive to her, but he was very manipulative. So like he would say things concerning my mother that would not be true. And even now there are things that she's still having to work out. But I thank God that over time my mother never said a bad word about him. She never did any of that. And it got to the point where literally his actions spoke for itself, and she was able to see for herself, and she was able to come back and apologize to my mother, like, okay, mama, I see, I understand. So literally, what you think your kids are not seeing you be consistent, they are seeing it and they get it. They will understand, and they will have more respect for you in the long run, I promise. It might seem like it's hard right now, but it really is. It's gonna work out to the point where they'll know who the real deal is. So is there any tips or any word of encouragement that you have for any mothers or fathers that are going through this? They are they feel like they're at their last moment. They are on the brink, they're on the cusp, they're on the edge, and they are just ready to just jump and just give it all. What would you say to that person?
Give yourself some grace, right? And I think you just said it. And I literally had to say this to myself every single day after I had my son. And it was, you do the best you can in the moment that you're in, right? Like, you do the best you can with the information that you have in the moment that you're in. That's all you can do, right? And that doesn't mean that the journey ain't gonna be hard. That don't mean that it might not end up in court and you might be fighting in the whole nine. That's very possible. And it's probably very likely, just being honest. But you do the best that you can with the information that you have in the moment that you're in. If you have a support group, like I lost my mom in 2019, and my father was already deceased. So, and on his dad's side, his parents were already deceased too. So my son doesn't have like grandparents, and we're the only family really in the Texas area. So we don't have that intermediary that you talked about. But if you are someone that is experiencing this and you do have a support system, it doesn't have to be family necessarily, right? It's just whoever you feel like you can trust with your child, number one.
Yes.
And that you can trust to drop off, pick up, keep an eye out, whatever that looks like. Be an ear, right? Whoever you feel like you can talk to. And then the last thing for me, and this is something that I would say I've been learning in the last 2 years, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I got it down packed and hurrah. No, I don't. Some days my good best friend have to be like, girl, didn't I tell you the last time? But God doesn't waste anything.
Yes.
Like nothing. He does not waste anything. So as bad as it is, people, entrepreneurs and all of this be talking about getting it out the mud and building it from ground up. Sometimes you got to get it out the mud, right? It's going to be a hard journey. There are going to be days that you just absolutely, we were talking pre-show, pre-recording about this book that I'm reading. There are going to be days where you don't like your story. And this is going to be the part of your story that you wish you did not have, that you wish you could X out. and life will be grand. But I promise you, God doesn't waste anything. So if he designed this for you, and don't get it mistaken, I'm not saying that God wanted you to be abused. I'm not saying that by any means. But if this was designed as part of your life, as part of who you are or who you are to become, God's not going to waste it, and he's going to do good for it. Even if that means, don't think it has to be some grand gesture of you being on a stage. That good may be you talking to one other person about your experience, and it helps them to leave the situation they're in. You saved their life. It could be just for that moment, and that would make it all worth it. So God doesn't waste anything.
Oh, listen, okay. He sops up all the crumbs. He's like, oh, you think you're gonna throw that away? Now pass it to me. No, I'm gonna go ahead and use that. Give me all them crumbs off that plate. I'll take that. He take them crumbs and he makes a whole meal.
Yes.
So I just want to just thank you so much for really sharing, because this type of journey and having to learn how to navigate certain spaces, it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming, and I just want to just say kudos to you, because what you are able to accomplish, and like you still have a bright smile, like your light, your fruit is showing, is absolutely beautiful. It shows that you can still be in the midst of something and still have fruit. Like I want to encourage you guys that it's not always about you share your story when the product is finished. That's something that, oh Lord, I struggle with perfection. That has been my battle. Like, okay, God, well, this is not, I don't have the right setup. I don't have the right this. I don't, I'm still in the midst of trying to work this out. And God is like, but I need you to share while you're in the midst of the storm, while that boat is still rocking. I'm gonna need you to use that microphone. Go ahead and crank that thing up and speak on it. You need to talk about it. So even if you are in the midst of what you're going through and what you're experiencing, and you feel like you are unqualified, you are qualified. When you say, okay, Lord, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna talk to this, when you move in the obedience that God is unctioning you to, that makes you qualified right then and there. Because what you're saying is, God, you are greater than what I'm going through right now. You are your grand design for me is much more grander than this sticky situation that I'm in right now, and I'm gonna trust you by being obedient to what you're telling me to do. So if it is you talking to that one person, if it's sharing your testimony at church, or if God has been calling you to start a nonprofit out of your story, and you've been just, I don't know, God, well, this is your confirmation. Sis, you need to get up on that. Brother, you need to get up on that, because there's so many people that we don't know that will be impacted by our stories. It could be you talking to that one person, and that one person God is exposing to thousands or to millions. You never know. So making sure that even in the midst of your boat rocking, in the midst of it don't look good, it's not pretty, you limping, you trying to pick yourself up, and God is saying, I need you to talk about this and shine the light. Do it, because that shows your faith, your faithfulness, and your resilience. So I just pray that the Lord will just cover you guys. I pray that he would just keep you. I pray that he would keep you and your children safe. You're coming and you're going. Father God, I pray that you will provide healing, and that you will provide a glorious outcome to the situations that they are going through. Lord, I pray that you would destroy every anxiety and every worry, Lord. Preserve their lives and their children's lives to fulfill your highest purpose and plan for their lives. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.
All right, y'all. Okay, so one last thing before we go, where can they find you? If they want to get connected with you, where can everybody find you?
So my organization's pages is the Ark of Noah on Facebook and Instagram. But me personally, I am Fear Slaying Cherry FearSlaying Cherry, just like the fruit. So Fierce Slaying Cherry on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, y'all. And I'll put all of her information in the description. If you would like to get connected with her, to connect with her nonprofit, you definitely want to get involved in what she's doing. Definitely reach out to her because she's gonna do some amazing things, y'all. She's gonna do some amazing things. All right, y'all. I love y'all, and I will talk to y'all again soon. Bye bye.